Howdy, this is my presentation about how Cape Town, South Africa will be the first town in history to run out of drinking water. My name is Robbie Porter and I'm taking environmental change. So here's a quick introduction about Cape Town. Dutch colonist Jan van Riebeeck was the first European and therefore the first white man to step foot on the soil that will later become Cape Town, South Africa. He was commissioned by the Dutch East India Company to establish a supply station for ships on their way from Europe to India. Because the city was on the verge of Africa, it has a lot of different winds and climates all colliding to create its own climate, one similar to the Mediterranean and California, which is unique considering that Cape Town is nowhere near as close to the equator as the other two are. Cape Town, South Africa is home to over 4 million people, 1 million tourists yearly, and over 7,000 different species of fauna. This is a literal hub of action that requires a very delicate environment to thrive as well as it has been over the past century. Cape Town has a very famous mountain, Table Mountain, that has given it this metropolis an iconic nickname, City of the Mountain of the Sea. Obviously, this nickname stems from how close it is to the ocean. As ships pass around the bottom of this continent, this mountain can be seen from miles away, despite what the conditions are on the sea, thus, the Sea of the Mountain. Due to a lack of rains over the past 3 years and the city's proximity to the nearest freshwater source, the dams of this well-known town are drying up and is expected to be completely without water by the end of April this year. With the increase in carbon dioxide's emissions in the atmosphere, it is affecting both the global temperature but also the pressure as well. Not only this, but the global change in wind patterns and ocean circulation have played a major role in contributing to this problem as well. We will be citing results that provide qualitative data that will not be visually presented in this presentation for the last 4 years of Cape Town's history. Cape Town is one of many cities that relies on rains from the coast to provide natural water that is captured by the man-made devices, otherwise referred to as dams. This change in the atmospheric pressure surrounding Cape Town has altered the rain patterns coming in from the Atlantic Ocean, and now no longer receives consistent rainfall, despite whether it is El Niño or La Niña. This, in part with the increasing population of the city, has created an even more serious drought with higher demand for water, more tourists coming in, and using the water for recreational activity and citizens' daily use. By itself, Cape Town might be able to take a slow recovery to a comfortable level of drinking water, but with its 5 million tourists annually, they essentially are using double the amount of water for showers, pools, and other extracurriculars than just leaving the area and essentially stealing what little water is left for those who are of domestic origin. As you can see here, this is from the Table Mountain's point of view. It's a beautiful overlook of Cape Town. As shown in the picture on the very first slide of the presentation, Cape Town, South Africa, is on the southernmost part of the continent of Africa. With a beautiful view of Cape of Good Hope to the south, Table Mountain creating a bowl effect around the city itself and the Great Karoo above it, creates plenty of impeccable landscape opportunities to see the work of the great creator, which is what draws tourists to this location every year. As you can see here, this quantitative data obtained straight from the government of the country of South Africa clearly demonstrates the decrease in the storage of the different major dams around the area. As you can see, in 2014, it was at its highest point, no matter which dam you're looking at. And over time, it gradually goes down, takes a big peak up, but now it's heading back in the down direction. You can see from these percentages right here. Also, you can see again from this chart obtained from the same government that over time, you can see there's a negative slope in the data and that it's heading in a horrible direction. As you can see below, there was still a slight drought in 2014 from the Thietwaterskloof Dam. As there is an increase in harmful emissions from fossil fuels in combination with our rising global temperatures, it has altered the invisible factors that surround Cape Town. We will go more in depth about this later in the presentation, but essentially there has been a pressure bubble around the area that has shifted the rain winds from coming in from the sea to water the area to diverting it around the city. This, in part with the mountains to the north, is essentially sealing off any rain from the north. As the population has grown nearly 25% in the past 10 years, the consumption of filtered water has also exponentially grown. As the 2018 pictures show, the largest dam in the area has taken a large hit and is continuing to get worse every day. With no rainfalls or large natural freshwater reserves, this town is in grave danger. Again, as you can see here, the dam in 2018 is significantly depleted than compared to the one in 2014. Due to the hot and humid climate, the lakes are drying up, and as clearly shown in this picture of a once prominent lake just outside Table Mountain. With the water receding, the soil becomes sand and erodes away, taking away what plants need to survive and essentially killing them. This creates a desertification effect within the natural reservoirs and is a positive loop within itself. We will dissect how these effects overall make the Cape Town catastrophe one large positive feedback loop later in the presentation. Here are a few more maps. You can see the map on the left was the first map ever documented, drawn of Cape Town, South Africa. It was made in 1781. Also, you can see from both the historic map and the second image that there has been a consistent and gradual increase in both urbanization and deforestation in the Cape Town area of South Africa. With the increase in travelers and demand for food and water, humans have been destroying the important resources surrounding the metropolis and essentially sealing their destiny of creating the first city in the world to run out of fresh water. Now, you can see in 1990 how they still have not yet expanded to this region, or part of the region yet, through urbanization and cultivated land. But in 2014, right here, you can see that there's more urban cities and the forests have gradually decreased over time. With the amount of solar radiation reaching the top of the atmosphere at a max at the equator and a minimum at the poles, this has drastically changed the temperature of Earth overall. More importantly, in this situation, the air temperature has changed. As we should all know from high school physics, warm air particle rises and those colder sink. Therefore, hot air rises at the equator and sinks at the poles. Given that these temperatures are at an all-time high, the wind patterns have never been so drastically affected. Given what we learned about the Coriolis effect, the location of Cape Town is on the outside reach of two major wind patterns. Any rains that could have potential of making its way towards the southern tip of Africa are quite literally blown away by the wind. Pun intended. According to the Goddard Institute of Space Studies, the global temperature has increased nearly 2 degrees Fahrenheit since this time 1 century ago. As the temperatures continue to rise annually, the force of the wind is directly influenced by this. The ozone depleting will increase solar radiation, causing more hot air to rise, and thus only exacerbating the Coriolis effect. Again, another positive feedback loop. Rains in this section of the globe derive from the mixture of hot and cold weather systems colliding, and travel on the backs of the hot winds. The location of Cape Town is at a very unfortunate position to receive natural rainfall, with the cold winds as its only source of potential rains. With the mountains just to the north of Cape Town, it creates a barricade of sorts that has a tendency to cut the stormy weather systems and reroutes them. This physical landscape actually prevents rains from coming over the mountains or from the sea, creating a mini atmospheric wall, for the lack of a better words, that sends the rains inland. And as you can see, this is the location of Cape Town. It is just barely escaping both of these small gyres created by the different changes in temperature. Because ocean circulations are drastically influenced by the wind, a lot of the content on this slide will be very similar. The Coriolis effect, because of its main forces include gravity and the rotating of the Earth, also dictates how the ocean currents perform. Just like the air temperature, it is also affected by solar radiation. In addition to this, it is always trying to reach an equilibrium. Because the water is constantly circulating and the sun's radiation is heating the water, equilibrium will never be reached, and thus the ocean will always have its many gyres that all affect each region differently. Again, let us examine the similar image of the Coriolis effect impacting the Earth, but this time keeping in mind that we are the water, not the air. Cape Town is barely on the cusp of the Benguela current, and the only direction this water is flowing is towards is to replace the lack of water near the equator, because this water is flowing westward. Cape Town is just at a bad location where there is no consistent source of coastal rains and with the increase in global temperatures, it's only going to get worse. There will be more hot water rushing to South America, and thus more cold water gyrating past Cape Town to try to fill the gap near the equator, and thereby taking what little rain it has with it. Again, you can see this is the location of Cape Town right here. The Benguela current just barely impacts the region in general, and then it continues to spin off right here, creating storms that throw it towards the Brazil current. As previously mentioned, both of the global scales of the atmosphere and the hydrosphere are intertwined, thus their response will be the same in regard to feedback loops. There is no sign of stopping money-hungry corporations from using their fossil fuels, which emit harmful effects that only further damage the ozone layer. This in turn creates an increase in solar radiation, which essentially equals a higher global temperature. The air will be hotter at the equator and will flow towards the poles, as it is replaced by the colder air, awaiting its turn to be heated. This affects the global wind patterns and the ocean circulations. In terms of Cape Town, South Africa, this means they will continue to receive no water from the oceans. More visitors will visit, take more water, and continue to deplete the resources until all that's left of Cape Town is just a goat town. And as you can see in this feedback loop right here, as the population increases, more travelers will want to travel, thereby using more fossil fuels for emission, which only exacerbates the Coriolis effect, which in turn creates less rain for Cape Town, which means less water, and this cycle continues and continues. Additionally, there have also been previous feedback loops that have been explained throughout the presentation. This is not a required part of the project, but this is my proposed solution. As a part of the United Nations action, they could help South Africa to give partial funding and labor to start a desalination plant. What this essentially means is that this plant, which would be ironically planted all along the coast, will intake ocean water and pump out enough drinkable water for the population. This would also give enough extra water to begin to build back the dams and reservoirs across the region. If the plant was similar to the desalination plant in Huntington Beach, California, it could generate 50 million gallons of water a day. As of the 26th of March, 2018, the reservoirs of Cape Town are only at 22.17% capacity, which is just over 237 billion gallons of water. And they're averaging about the loss of 195 million gallons a day. If the United Nations funded only half of this venture, which a total would be $3 billion, various trade partners and generous countries could help fund the rest. This, of course, is a hypothetical scenario. This would buy 5 desalination plants and therefore produce 250 million gallons, and putting over 50, This would buy 5 desalination plants and therefore produce 250 million gallons of water a day, and therefore putting an additional $50 million back into the reservoir. There should be no price on helping desperate people that are about to lose everything. Here are my citations. Thank you for watching my video, and I hope you learned as much as I did when I was working on this project. Thanks, and Gigam.